We are going to have our very last day in the book of Ruth. I always get a little bit bummed out when we transition out of a sermon series, and this one in particular, I've really enjoyed going through Ruth with you guys. And as I read through Ruth 4 over and over again, the main theme that popped out for me was the idea of dignity. Dignity. Now, when I say dignity, I want to be clear what I mean by that. I think we need to reclaim this word a little bit. When we think dignity, I think we think dignitary. Someone who's maybe very important, has a significant title, maybe has a certain amount of money, lives in a certain place, wears a certain type of clothes. That's not biblical dignity. Dignity, even by the world's standards, is a standard that shows honor and respect for other people. It transcends what we make. It transcends what our position is, where we live. We get to learn so much from Ruth and Boaz and Naomi and others about being dignified and the honor and respect we show other people that actually makes us dignified in the Lord. So we're going to dive right into that this morning, looking for the first few verses here, verses 1 and 2, right in chapter 4. No sooner had Boaz gone up to the gate and sat down there than the next of kin of whom Boaz had spoken came passing by. So Boaz said, "Come over, friend, sit down here." And he went over and sat down. Then Boaz took 10 men of the elders of the city and said, "Sit down here." So they sat down. You got to love Boaz just taking care of business. He's like, "Sit down, sit down, sit down, sit down." And they all sat down. And think, what are the chances of this? This is another one of those as it happened ironic moments. Remember, we ended last week and Ruth 3 ends with Ruth going to Naomi, and Naomi says essentially sit, rest, stay. Boaz is going to take care of business. The very morning that Boaz goes to that gate, who should walk by but the no-name next of kin? Perfect timing, right? Of all people, Albert Einstein had this awesome quote, "Coincidence is God's way of remaining anonymous." Albert Einstein said that, okay? And there's something about the timing of all this that you have to recognize. This is not a coincidence, right? This is a God instance. I didn't come up with that phrase. I love using God instance as opposed to coincidence. When God is in control of the timing. And of course, God set it up so that Boaz could take care of this right off the bat with no name. Now, when I say no name, I say that for a reason. This individual doesn't get a name in this story. We don't know this close next of kin what his name was. Think about it. A lot of people got names in this very short story. At least Orpah got a name. Right? Remember Orpah? Well, said, "Yeah, Naomi, I'm going to be with you." And then Naomi lays out what it's really going to be like. She's like, "Yeah, just kidding. I'm going back to Moab." Even Orpah got her name mentioned. This guy, who most certainly had a name, right? His name doesn't get referenced in here. That's important. Why? Because we make a name for ourselves by our actions. Your name is only important if it backs up what you do, who we are. And this person doesn't do anything important to move the story forward, so he doesn't get a name. Think about it, even with respect to ourselves. My name is very insignificant, actually. There's a reason why I never get up here and introduce myself as Scott. It doesn't matter. The only reason my name is at all important is to tie me maybe to my family line. But even that doesn't matter. What matters is what we do. What matters is, do we go and represent God, yes or no? Do we go out and advance the will of God, yes or no? And this individual did not. So no name doesn't get mentioned. And he sits down, no name, right? And then he brings these 10 elders, and I want you to understand what that probably looked like and why he did it. So in a city or town, you would have your elders, would be pretty well known, and they could be called upon to help. Called upon to help with things, to witness to things, to even judge things. And here, Boaz sees him and says, "I want you to sit down because I want you to witness something very, very important." This would have been kind of like an ad hoc assembly or a court. This was pretty common. This was done with some frequency, so it wasn't so bizarre. But what's great is that Boaz actually did it. He calls the elders and he says, "Sit down." And this shows us that Boaz wants to do all of this above board. This is out in the open. This is during the day with important witnesses. When we think of people making deals, it's like a back alley kind of a deal. You do it in a dark room, right? That's not what happens here. This is so important to Boaz. He wants to do this all above board with witnesses. That's dignity. Honoring his dignity, Ruth's dignity, Naomi's dignity. Honoring his word. And he wants to do this all out in the open. So how he did this is very, very important. Let's keep reading and see what happens next in verses 3 and 4. He then said to the next of kin, Naomi, who has come back from the country of Moab, is selling the parcel of land that belonged to our kinsman Elimelech. So I thought I would tell you of it and say, buy it in the presence of those sitting here and in the presence of the elders of my people. If you'll redeem it, redeem it. But if you will not, tell me, so that I may know. For there is no one prior to you to redeem it, and I come after you. So he said, I will redeem it. Note Boaz's strategy. All he's mentioned so far is the land. No name. Do you want the land? This is the easy part, right? Who in their right mind who has the money would say no to this? Yeah, sure, I'll take on the land. It's brilliant. Boaz is revealing the mind of this person. So far, all we know is this man is looking out for himself. Yeah, sure, I'll take on some land. Hasn't brought up the people as coming with that at all. Now, the other thing you got to know about this is most of these stories, especially in the Old Testament, these were shared verbally or orally. They would have been told like I'm reading it to you now. They wouldn't have been read. So if you're hearing this story for the very first time, you're supposed to experience a little drama here. Because no name just said, I'm taking the land. And you've listened to this and you say, well, hold on a second. We have this incredible night between Boaz and Ruth, and they have this great conversation about what the plan is, and no name just stepped in and took the land. And if he gets the land, he gets Naomi. If he gets Naomi, he gets Ruth. What about Ruth and Boaz? This is supposed to stir up a little drama in this story. But then it goes on. But before it goes on, I want to reflect about Naomi. Because you'll notice here, Boaz says something very significant about Naomi. It says Naomi's agreed to sell the land. She did? Where was that in the story? We don't get that, right? Is this all part of the plan that Boaz has with Naomi? Presumably. At no point does Naomi fight this, right? But I think it's important that Naomi's part doesn't come up. You see her Naomi's humility. You see that Naomi is deferring to Boaz. She's actually trusting that Boaz will take care of her and of Ruth. You see Naomi's deferring to God's plan, trusting that God is going to take care of her. So it's as if the part of Naomi's part in allowing this land to go is completely agreed by her, but it's implicit. It's not important. You see her respect and her deference, and I would say her dignity, even in the fact that she's not mentioned as being a part of this deal. She's good with it, and she doesn't have to say it. Boaz is representing her, and he's doing it well. So what comes next? Verses 5 and 6. Then Boaz said, the day you acquire the field from the hand of Naomi, you're also acquiring Ruth, the Moabite, the widow of the dead man, to maintain the dead man's name on his inheritance. At this, the next of kin said, I cannot redeem it for myself without damaging my own inheritance. Take my right of redemption yourself, for I cannot redeem it. Now you get to see his true colors. Now Boaz mentions the people. This is Boaz's P.S. Oh, by the way, you want the land? You get the ladies. You get Naomi, you get Ruth. This is the hard part. Now the people part comes in. Now we've revealed No Name's heart. He doesn't want to have to deal with that. All he wanted was the land. He wanted the easy stuff, the stuff he could have and hold for himself. All of a sudden there's a condition that goes along with that. And it's a very real condition. And we reveal all of a sudden in a moment that No Name's a bit spoiled. Spoiled, and I use that word very intentionally because it's right here in the text. When it says, I cannot redeem it for myself without damaging my own inheritance. No Name is saying the word shachat. I cannot spoil my own inheritance. I cannot ruin my own, I cannot corrupt my own inheritance. No name is spoiled. He's only worried about himself. This is a beautiful definition of spoiled, by the way. Someone who chooses their own plan over God's plan. Because that's exactly what he's done. He's in for the land, and then all of a sudden he learns the depth of what he's agreed to, and he backs out. He's choosing his own plan over God's plan. It's going to have a big consequence. Now, to be fair to No Name, I want to make sure you guys understand the deal. I want you to understand what he and then eventually Boaz agreed to do. Deuteronomy 25, 5 through 10 set up a system. God set up a system for people to follow if someone died, a husband died without a son. We don't have time to read through all of it, so I'm going to summarize it here for you. In that section, God laid out if a man dies without a son, his brother would take his wife, and their son would be his son. Now, here we're pretty confident that No Name and Boaz aren't brothers, because if they were, they would have been mentioned as brothers. So they're probably first, second, third cousins. But what this says is in effect, because Ruth lost her husband Mahlon without a son, that Ruth will get married to someone else, here No Name or Boaz. And the son, the child of their marriage, will go to the family of Mahlon. So in other words, the brother gives up a son, right? The second husband gives up the son, gives up the inheritance to the first husband's family line. No Name doesn't want that. But note who else gave up his son. God. God gave up his son. This is not a coincidence that this deal involves giving up a child. God wants to know, are you willing to give up your son? This is a very significant trade, which proves to us that redemption is not for the selfish. Redemption is not for the selfish. No Name's main concern was his own inheritance. And because he was so concerned about his own stuff, he missed out on Jesus Christ as his inheritance. Spoiler alert, right? Coming out of this family line is Jesus Christ. No Name steps out because he just wants the land. He just wants to deal with his own stuff. And because of that, he got himself out of the family line of Jesus Christ. We have to remember this. If you want to participate in God's plan, there's a good chance you're going to have to give up on your own stuff. Your own plans, your own goals, your own dreams, your own stuff. It's a beautiful thing about the way God works. Give him your stuff, give him your plans, and watch what he does with it. Redemption is not for the selfish. If you want to participate in God's plan, it often requires us giving things up. No Name couldn't do it. Boaz could. Let's keep reading. Now, this was the custom in former times in Israel concerning redeeming and exchanging. To confirm a transaction, the one took off a sandal and gave it to the other. This was the manner of attesting in Israel. So when the next of kin said to Boaz, "Acquire it for yourself," he took off his sandal. So now you guys know why I wore sandals. I want you guys to kind of get a glimpse of what this transaction entailed and why this was important. Okay? This was an old custom. And when someone did a deal to confirm that deal, they would hand off the sandal. Now, note this isn't a sandal exchange, right? This isn't they traded sandals. This is an image actually on the screen of what this might have looked like. No Name probably gave up his sandal to Boaz. In other words, saying, step into my shoes. Step into my position, right? Because No Name said, I'm not going to take the land. I'm not going to take on the family. You step into my shoes. Now, we also don't know, by the way, that Boaz would have given him the sandal back. So now picture No Name, after this whole deal goes down, walking around the city like this. Right? Awkwardly, one sandal on, one sandal off. Not on a clean, carpeted stage. Stone, dirt, presumably ceramic, glass. This would have been very, very uncomfortable for No Name. This was a really significant part of the transaction, and it gives something for those elders to witness. So I want you to really see this important sandal handoff is more than just aesthetic. It was actually very, very meaningful, and it would have been felt, especially by No Name. Let's keep reading verses 9 through 12. And Boaz said to the elders and all the people, "Today you're witnesses that I have acquired from the hand of Naomi all that belonged to Elimelech and all that belonged to Chilion and Mahlon. I've also acquired Ruth, the Moabite, the wife of Mahlon, to be my wife, to maintain the dead man's name on his inheritance, in order that the name of the dead may not be cut off from his kindred and from the gate of his native place. Today you are witnesses." Then all the people who were at the gate, along with the elders, said, "We are witnesses. May the Lord make the woman who is coming into your house like Rachel and Leah, who together built up the house of Israel. May you produce children in Ephrathah and bestow a name in Bethlehem. And through the children that the Lord will give you by this young woman, may your house be like the house of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah." There's a really important word here that I don't want you guys to miss. In verse 10, Boaz says, "I've also acquired Ruth the Moabite to maintain the dead man's name." This word for maintain is kum, and it means raise, stand, or build. So read it this way. "I've also acquired Ruth the Moabite to raise the dead man's name." Boaz and Ruth come together, have a child, to give that child to Mahlon's name and to his family, raising the dead man's name, raising the lineage that will produce Jesus Christ, who literally raised the dead. Raised the dead man's name. This should give us the chills, what these two just agreed to do. They've opened the way for Jesus Christ to raise the dead through raising this dead man's name. Beautiful prayer by the people for both Boaz and for Ruth. May this woman be like Rachel and Leah. Just so you guys understand who they were, what they did. These were Jacob's wives, had a lot of kids, and birthed the 12 tribes of Israel. These 12 tribes were seen as foundational for God's people, for the Israelites. Very, very important ladies who birthed those 12 tribes. That 12 then becomes a very important biblical number. In other words, may Ruth have lots of kids, and may those kids be foundational for God's people moving forward. That's that prayer. And then there's a reference to the house of Perez. And I want you to know this word Perez, this name Perez, it's Perez, and it means to burst forth. Burst forth. May your lineage, may your family line burst forth. This is actually the root of our word parent. So if you have a kid, you're a Perez. You're a Perez, and I love this. I think about this with respect to my own kids. My whole goal is that my children burst forth out of our family and can do far more than I can ever possibly do. May they be smarter and stronger and more capable and better servants of the Lord than I can be. That they burst forth out of our household. They're saying, Boaz and Ruth, may your descendants burst forth into this world for the Lord. And of course, Perez is in the lineage of Jesus Christ. These are breadcrumbs, these are hints that out of this family line that you're seeing here developing through Boaz and Ruth, you're going to get a very significant person, right? Person in quotes, being Jesus Christ. Let's keep going the next few verses. So, Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife. When they came together, the Lord made her conceive, and she bore a son. Then the women said to Naomi, "Blessed be the Lord, who has not left you this day without next of kin. And may his name be renowned in Israel. He shall be to you a restorer of life and a nourisher of your old age. For your daughter-in-law who loves you, who is more to you than 7 sons, has borne him." Then Naomi took the child and laid him in her bosom and became his nurse. Now Ruth has a child. Remember, Ruth was married for about 10 years. No kid. Hadn't gotten pregnant in 10 years. Back then, you hadn't had a kid in 10 years, it probably wasn't going to happen. Way shorter lifespans, okay? 10 years, no child. Meets Boaz and boop, there's a kid. What are the chances, right? This is another beautiful instance of God's timing and blessing and affirming their union. Now God has given her a child, just in time. And then God gets a little credit. You notice how God gets such little credit in this story? But when a child shows up, bless the name of the Lord, right? And we still do this today. Even people who often keep God in the background in their lives. When a child enters the world, because let's be honest, if you've ever seen this happen, it's a miracle. To watch the beauty of a life coming out of another life, you have to acknowledge the existence of God. And when a kid shows up, oh man, God is amazing. But here's the thing. God deserves credit for the ordinary and the extraordinary. Yes, he deserves credit for new babies, but he deserves credit for new days and breakfast and where you live and your job and the clothes that you can put on. God deserves credit for all of it, the extraordinary and the ordinary. And you guys remember Ruth? You know, the lady whose name is on this story, how little she comes up in this chapter? Think about Ruth right now. In this situation right here, where's Ruth? She just got acquired. Ruth just got acquired. Now, granted, she's the one who set this up, right? She's the one who went to Boaz, laid at his feet, and actually made the proposal. But after that, she lost all control. She had no choice over whether No Name or Boaz said, yep, I'll take it. I'll take the land and I'll take them. And not long after this acquisition, she then bears this child, which anyone who has been through knows that is not easy, right? This is Ruth's role. And because of all of that humble awesomeness, she is described with respect to Naomi as more to you than 7 sons. In a society that's very patriarchal, that's arguably sexist from our perspective, this incredible woman is described as more to you than 7 sons. This is dignity. This is the dignity of Ruth. Even by world standards. Here's a definition of dignity right here. A state or quality of being worthy of honor or respect. Not demanding honor or respect, being worthy of honor and respect. Why would I call Ruth dignified? Because I think she's the most honorable person in this story. Not in that she's honored by others, but in how honorably she treated everyone else. Or look how respectful she was. She respected everyone else. This woman said almost no negative thing in this entire story. Honoring Naomi, honoring Boaz, honoring God after coming from a society that believed in multiple gods. Respecting Naomi, respecting Boaz, respecting God. And of course, Boaz is right behind her, right? In the dignified category. Not because of what his position was or how large his land was, because of how he treated Ruth and Naomi and obeyed the Lord and how dignified he was to those people. That's dignity. And of course, we can't forget about Naomi, right? We're told she's the nurse or the nourisher. Naomi, right, whose name is pleasant. She's now pleasant again. She's made pleasant by this. I want you to understand this word nurse here that you see towards the end of verse 16. She became his nurse. This word is aman. It's kind of like our word amen. And it means to nourish, to confirm, or support. So the reason I bring that up, it doesn't mean that Naomi was his wet nurse. What it means is that all of a sudden, Naomi, who lost her sons, is able to nourish and support the future of Israel. This is an awesome thing that's just been bestowed on her. That's all she wanted. She wanted to nourish and support the future of her people and God's people. And thanks to Boaz and Ruth, she was able to do that, to nourish and support him. Who is it? Let's keep reading the last passage here. The women of the neighborhood gave him a name, saying, a son has been born to Naomi. They named him Obed. He became the father of Jesse, the father of David. Now these are the descendants of Perez. Perez became the father of Hezron, Hezron of Ram, Ram of Amminadab, Amminadab of Nahshon, Nahshon of Salmon, Salmon of Boaz, Boaz of Obed, Obed of Jesse, and Jesse of David. Even that, did you notice who had the kid? Naomi. Just bypassing Ruth. Another name that's bypassed a lot that I wanted to pause on is Obed. I think this is probably one as Christians we'd fail if someone would quiz us. Who was the child of Ruth and Boaz? You'd be like, I don't know. You just think of out of this family line comes David. Obed gets like passed over. And I want you to know why this is such a powerful name for us to remember. Obed means a worshiper, a guardian, and a provider. Obed, the worshiper of God. Obed, the guardian of God's lineage through God's people, because of his very presence, his very birth. Obed, the provider, probably did help provide for Ruth, maybe even Naomi, but he really provided for the descendancy, the lineage of God's people to get down through David, to get down through Jesus Christ. I think we should all shoot to have a little bit of Obed in each of us. I mean, just think if we were thought of as people who are worshipers, guardians, and providers, every single one of us. Worshipers of God in all we do. Guardians of his gospel. The grace, the truth at all times. And then providers for each other. Obeds. I think we should all aspire to be a little bit more like that guy that no one really remembers. And I do want you to understand the relationship of these people to David, the great promised King David. All right, Boaz would be the great-grandfather then of King David, and Obed being the grandfather. And then Obed has the son Jesse, and Jesse has the great King David. But looking even further down that line that doesn't get mentioned in Ruth, I want you to see a greater glimpse of this family line that we actually get from the book of Matthew. In Matthew's gospel, it starts out with a long lineage that most people skim, and we're not going to be able to go through all of it because it would take the rest of my sermon. But I want to give you a glimpse of that family line getting to King David, because I want you to note something very important about the lineage of David and the lineage of Jesus Christ that's a little bit peculiar. So I'm going to read through this sentence, this whole segment on the genealogy, and I want you to listen and look for who might pop out to you. Abraham was the father of Isaac, and Isaac the father of Jacob, and Jacob the father of Judah and his brothers, and Judah the father of Perez, and Zerah by Tamar, and Perez the father of Hezron, and Hezron the father of Aram, and Aram the father of Amminadab, and Amminadab the father of Nahshon, and Nahshon the father of Salmon, and Salmon the father of Boaz by Rahab, and Boaz the father of Obed by Ruth, and Obed the father of Jesse, and Jesse the father of King David. If you were to read Matthew 1, you'd see that would go all the way down to Jesus Christ. And for me, one of the things that pops about this lineage is the women who get mentioned in the lineage of Jesus Christ. At this point in time, lineage and genealogy was generally only limited to the guys. All that quote-unquote mattered was the dads and the sons. Even now, today, we generally do genealogies by this. We do it by the name of the father. Here, 4 crucial women are mentioned. And I want you to note each of them. Tamar, Rahab, Ruth, Mary. Tamar, Rahab, Ruth, and Mary. So if they were mentioned, they're really important, right? Who were they? Well, Tamar, she played a prostitute. She actually played a prostitute to get her man to be with her, to have a child that would end up in the descendancy of Jesus Christ. How about Rahab? She was a prostitute in the genealogy of Jesus Christ. Later comes Ruth. She's a Moabite. She's not even in the line of God's people. She gets mentioned. And of course, we can't forget Mary. She was a virgin. So it's not even humanly, physically possible for her to have had a kid other than God and God's Spirit allowing her to do that. 4 women that we probably would not include, all of them specifically and importantly mentioned in the lineage of Jesus Christ. I bring this up for this reason. We've got to remember the relationship between Jesus Christ and outsiders. Those who we might consider outside who is important. Jesus came from outsiders. This is his family line. People we wouldn't want to mention, probably we want in here. I want him in here. Jesus came from outsiders. For who? For outsiders. Right? There's no longer Jew nor Gentile, slave nor free. All they have to do is believe in me. Jesus has an awesome relationship with outsiders. We as a church have to have an awesome relationship with outsiders. Open doors, welcoming, come in to learn more about the God who created you and me and how to be like him every single day. That's why Jesus came, from outsiders, for outsiders. That's the dignity of communion. That's the honor and respect of communion. You guys think about dignity. We tend to think dignitary and someone who might wear a certain thing, right? Wear a certain type of clothes that makes them important. Jesus Christ was stripped of his clothing. That's what made him important. We think of someone who's dignified as having a certain title or position, having a higher office or even a higher physical office or a bigger home. That's what makes them dignified. The only height that Jesus Christ got was being put up on a cross. That's dignity. Let's pray.